That's successful.
Okay, recording in progress.
Hey Jason, can you do a sound check for me, please?
Loud and clear.
Now,
Yeah,
you
for
are.
you.
Yes, you are. Did you hear that over there?
You want me to speak louder, you said?
No, we're good, we're good.
Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. All right. Well, we are set and ready to start our HR meeting. A note as far as just kind of wanted to bring this up because of the things that we do have on our agenda. I just wanted to remind everyone that we're talking about generalities as far as, whether it be contracts or salary and things like that. We can't talk about specific people or specific things that would need to be for a closed door. So I just kind of wanted to remind us about that if that we do end up with specific questions about that for certain things. Certainly probably Jared, Margaret, Jared, they would be your resources for those specific things. So I just wanted to mention that for us before we get started. And so we have got our consent agenda, letter A here. And what you'll notice as far as that, I know we kind of have some questions about a couple things on here. A couple things that you will notice as far as we've got all of the administrative contracts are on or should I just let you explain it, Margaret?
Oh, no,
Or is that okay? Okay, I didn't want to overstep my bounds. We have all of the under staff appointments. We have all of the administration contracts listed on there. This is a new way of doing it, and anybody step in, yeah, I'm sure you'll give an explanation, but this is a new way of doing it. Typically, I believe that we had half in 1 year. There are 2-year contracts, and so we had half 1 year, half the next year. And typically we would go through this approval in like February, March, something like that. But there was a desire to change how we do this.
Right, so right now, the way that it's set up, we have a group of people that are approved 1 year, and then we have another group of administrators that are approved the second year. So we're constantly approving contracts for administrators every year. And typically, administrators are on 2-year contracts, and historically, the district has hired in so that we're only doing 1 round of approvals every 2 years. And so what this is our effort to align all of the contracts so that every 2-year cycle, when they're up for renewal, all of the admin contracts will come through at the same time. And that's particularly important in light of some changes that are likely to be discussed in the upcoming year as it relates to the structure of administrative benefits and how we align everyone into any potential benefit changes that may be occurring. And that's a conversation that we will be bringing to you in the future. And generally, it just provides for some administrative efficiencies in terms of monitoring who's up for when it just provides cleaner operational efficiency. Other things that you want to say, Jared?
No, the rationale for the change is just like all the other groups, we are in the need of doing a market study as well as a contract analysis of other positions similar throughout the state and certainly within our cohort groups that we've been looking at for our non-certified and our certified staff. So the next logical group is the administration. We've done non-certified and we're in the middle of certified. The next group will be the administration. And generally, school districts do the administration on an every 3-year basis because they're the ones that have the most change in them compared to like teacher contracts and so on.
Mhm.
They just have more volatility and there's a lot more movement, that's why. And so this is marking a time for us to say, let's get everybody on the same page with the expiration date. So that way, when we make changes, we don't make changes for half the group now, and then the other half of the group when their contracts come out. Right, it's an alignment process that we're looking at. Any questions about that or any things that you would like us to think about, but that's the rationale behind why.
I guess for me, it brings to question. I just worry about like turnover all at one time. You know, if you're thinking about that, like, okay, what if we have half of the, you know, administrators that for whatever reason aren't gonna be coming back, whether they choose or, you know, whatever it is.
Whether they choose or you choose.
Then,
right?
yeah, whatever. Then all of a sudden you've got everybody, you know what I mean? Like everybody's contracts come up at the same time. That thought came to mind. And then also as far as like, okay, so if we have referendum or not, or changes that we need to make, does that affect contracts that way too?
Yeah, so I would share like, first of all, the first thing you're worried about, I think is very unlikely, but could happen either way. As a board, you could say, we're tired with all of you, and we're gonna end contracts and pay people out, right? And get rid of everybody if you wanted to. Conversely, if there was a walkout, we could all walk out anyway. There's an out fee in our contract, right? We would just share with you, we are terminating our contract on our side of the end of the deal, and here's your out fee, right? So those things can happen either way if any party chooses. It's unlikely though that everybody all at once would have that, or even half of us all at once would want to do that, right? So I think that's a very low end worry,
Okay.
you know, for you guys to think about, because it could happen anyway. So, and the second part was,
Basically, if contracts needed to end early, or, you know, maybe it was a staffing changes or, you know, things like that.
yeah, so if contracts needed to end early, there's a provision for the board to be able to end a contract earlier than its termination date.
Okay.
I'm sure that there would be a discussion about damages and whether or not you need to pay those depending on what the real rationale was, right? If somebody does something that's, you know, illegal, hurts kids, whatever else, right? You're probably going to be able to terminate them, you know, because you'll have cause. And there probably won't be any discussion point. Matter of fact, our termination is lower than cause, right? So you have a really good, like the board has done a pretty good job to say, we have garnered ourselves the rights as a board to really be able to terminate somebody with really low need for a rationale, right? Your threshold is very low.
Right, we don't have to go through a due process.
Right. And that's how you have it written in contracts. Now, if you were a just cause contract, you would have to have a lot of rationale and reason for termination of an administrator. Right, so with the contracts, the way they've written now and the way that the administrators have accepted them, I don't think you have to worry about that. You could still probably dismiss without much due diligence on your part. And again, it's more of a legal opinion than my opinion, but you would want to ask your attorneys, like, what is that about? But really, the threshold for you and our administrative contract is very low and it favors the board quite a bit. So if you still wanted to get rid of somebody, probably could fairly easily.
Okay.
Okay, but again, also on our end of it, what we have is we have the ability to tell you and just say, we're done on this date and here's our oath fee, right? And so we have that on the administrative side.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or things that you might be worried about navigating? I'll bring up a topic because I know that it's on some people's minds, like where are we with the evaluation process, right? And does that have to come into consideration when we're looking at these contracts? Like, are we completed with all of those? And for instance, administrative evaluations, right? They're on ongoing process. I would say if we had an administrator who was on an improvement plan, I would say, let's not deal with that contract right now. Let's deal with it when we can do a full review of that. But if there's an administrator or administrators who are in good standing, and they're not on an improvement plan, I don't see the harm or the detriment in putting their name forward. And I certainly have put forward names of all those under my control. So, I want you to know I don't have an administrator right now who's in that process of an improvement plan, or that I'd be worried about extending their contract for another year or a 2-year contract, depending on how they would align on that schedule.
Anybody have any other questions regarding the consent agenda?
Also, if you're worried about where we are in the process of my evaluation, if you feel more comfortable to pull me off, I would be fine with that too.
Okay,
So if that's if HR wants to wait and make sure that that's completed, go ahead, pull me off. I'm okay with that.
well, I was gonna ask kind of what our thoughts are regarding that, just because I know that like from the standpoint of it's a different operation, well, now we're talking specifics. And
I
my,
brought it up. As long as you don't get into my performance. I'm okay with it.
No.
I mean, we know that.
From an
the
operations standpoint?
board evaluates Jared and his staff evaluate everybody else on the list.
Mhm.
So it's clearly a different operation. So I don't think we're
Okay.
talking about personnel specifics here.
Mhm.
We're just talking about the process.
Okay.
And the process is that we haven't completed our process. But Jared just mentioned that he probably hasn't completed his process with some of the people on
I
the
shared
list
with
as
you
well.
my rationale and decision.
So it's a matter of where does the board sit in completion of our process, the likelihood of what it's going to result in and when it's going to finish, and is it going to finish in a reasonable time frame that's going to allow us to get Jared's name added to this where it doesn't look, I should say look, where it's not inconvenient for anybody. Margaret and her market references or rolling out new benefits packages. But if we take Jared off this list, then we better get a meeting in with Diana and finish the dates by the end of February. And so far, we've not been able to do that. So it's on us as a board to both, if we take them off, then it's a collective commitment to get them back on by the end of February. And if we can't do it, then leave them on. So that's kind of where
Okay.
we got to pick one or the
That's
other. We can't have it both ways.
And just the quick synopsis, it's not that we haven't tried to get that done.
Sure.
Dates have been challenging. We tried for November, we tried for December, we tried for January, now we're into February. Just trying to get all of them and working with Lynn. And I talked with David about this too. Forthcoming in the next year, we're gonna have these dates pre-scheduled to make it easier, because right now trying to find that, Lynn will have those dates out hopefully by midweek, so we can get those, and it's got, I mean, technically, that evaluation should have been done end of December.
Yeah.
Because January we have going through, and it's just been, a lot of other things have come up that were more urgent. I can't get into specifics, won't get into specifics. I don't wanna say there hasn't been an urgency, but there hasn't really been a true urgency, if you know what I mean.
And the fact that, I mean, I think you just said the words I was looking for in a good way to say it, the fact that it's not an urgent thing to complete this process. I think we all kind of know where the process is gonna end anyways, so I'm more than comfortable leaving Jared on.
I'm comfortable leaving him on.
I'm okay either way.
I can. I have a preference of separating the superintendent position, I'll say that. Just because it's a different process, as far as like these evaluations are done differently than, the board. I mean, I understand we're in a different, you know, perhaps this year is a different position. And so if the majority wants to go forward with this, I mean, you know, that's fine. I can support that, but my preference would be from an operational standpoint because it is different. You know, and there's a different sorry, that'll be my next question there, but, so I will support what the committee
I have a question then.
supports.
We talked earlier about the fact that this movement is being done because of a lot of other operational kinds of things.
Mhm.
If we pull Jared off at this point in time, does that have intended or unintended consequences for some of those operational kinds of things?
Well, I mean, you are up for a renewal?
I am up, I'm in mid, so I would be, again, you have runway.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it would be different, I would be saying something different to you right now. If mine was done at the end of 25, right, I would be saying, listen, you guys have to make a decision.
Right.
And you have to make a decision really quickly here, by the end of January, you absolutely have to give me a notice of non-renewal,
Right.
if that's what you're thinking.
Right.
Right? You're not in that spot,
Right.
which is why I said, you know, listen, if you want the comfortability to say, we went through our whole process, that's fine, just know that I will have some explaining to do to my staff who understand that this is where we're going. Right? They understand that we've put together, this for your reaction, and I will just have to walk it back and say, listen, they understood, what I put forward, they agreed with what I put forward. Right? But there's a different process for me and they want to see that process through before they do this with me, right? That's all I would have to say.
Follow-up question.
Yep.
Next year comes around and we are Johnny on the spot and our stuff is done by the end of December, you know, ish. Would you still be in that list of, would it look the same? In 2 years or what, you know what I'm saying?
No, well, it
No.
depends on what action you took this year, right? We're trying to get everybody aligned.
What I'm saying is, in the alignment, one thing I'm hearing is to pull the superintendent out because it's different from the other administrators. Is that the goal, is to have the superintendent in that in 2 years so everyone's together?
Our goal is to try to get everybody's contract on the same end cycle. So that way, if you make changes to our benefits as a group, right? Then we all enter into that new contract discussion with you simultaneously,
So,
not at different times, right?
Yeah.
Across maybe different boards, right? So that is where I have seen some things go pretty south pretty quickly. The board takes the first half and says, we're gonna do this new contract with these benefits and whatever else, right? And says to the second half, we'll get you next year. And then there's turnover on the board or a change in outcome. And then they go, well, sorry, you don't get that. But then these people have this contract, right? And then there's this weirdness between everybody. We don't want that. We want to make sure we have, like, if we're gonna do a group mentality, a group switched, you know, or the board's gonna have to be pretty strong to say, listen, we're gonna treat each one of you very independently and differently than any other one. And every contract's going to be maybe a little different. Some school districts do that, but that's a change in philosophy that we would have to really navigate, which is gonna cause some turmoil, maybe, and some turnover. What we're trying to do is navigate so that we don't have both of those kind of issues. We're trying to navigate, which is what they expect and what would be comfortable, which is we're get everybody on the same pace again. We're gonna negotiate as you know, these contracts as a group, and this is the group that's gonna get whatever benefits, and then we're gonna move on. Okay, and so that's what we're aiming for. We're open to do it however you want. I just have to know what it is you want so that I can help navigate that.
I'm good leaving him on.
What's that?
I'm good leaving him on.
Okay. with that understand, I mean, I can understand that as far as like the different benefit packages and things like that. One more question I have and then, however, on here, like, so the 2-year contracts then for administration would start July of 25
Mhm.
and would be for 2 years.
Correct.
So yours says July of 26.
That's correct.
So
Should be-
how,
should
that's
always
off
be-
in
Should
alignment.
all these be reworded to extend them through the first of 27?
That's what the end.
They
that's
will,
what the end-
right.
But it
The end
doesn't,
date will be the
that's
27th.
my point. It
Right.
doesn't say that some of these are 2-year contracts and some of these are 1-year contracts. Essentially, if we're trying to get the alignment that, this is my question, Tina.
Mhm.
That somewhere in the resolution and the staff appointments should be lining everybody up to conclude on June 30th of 27 or July 1st of 27. That's just,
Right.
that statement is missing from this document, but it's what I heard everybody in the room
So
say.
I think Tina may be getting at the question of, well, Jared, if yours is in 26 and others, why don't we just give these others a 1-year
That's what I think.
contract,
That's
right?
what I thought you were doing.
That's what I'm wondering, if we want alignment.
So we do want alignment. However, the only way that you can do it that way is to give everybody up there whose effective date is the 25 school year, or
26.
excuse me, the 7/1/25, right? You would have to non-renew their 2-year contract. Then give them or issue them a 1-year contract, right?
Can extend it 2-year.
You can extend a 2-year contract. That's what I'm saying. It's easier to give a 1-year extension
That's what.
because the
it
law benefits that, right? So looking at anybody who has a 26
It's a 1-year
expiration,
extension.
they get a 1-year extension. It's easier to do it that way and is less, you know, than to try to give everybody who's on a 21, try to give everybody who's in 25 expiration a 1-year to match up because of what you would have to go through to get to there.
Right, but
Understand what I'm saying?
that's you, Sarah, Jen Pennington, and,
Casey,
yeah, maybe one other.
And Sarah.
They're all at 26, so why aren't we 2-year contracts for everybody in 25 and a 1-year extension for everybody in 26 is ultimately what I think you're attempting.
That's what
to do.
we're attempting to do.
Okay, well, then it
Yeah.
should be, I don't want to say split up and worded that way, but just to make sure we're on the same page as to what we're doing.
Yeah, and then they would all be a 27 expiration.
And nobody has any, Margaret or.
I can split it out
Yeah,
between
1-year
2-year
extensions
and
don't
1-year
bother.
extensions.
Mhm.
1-year extensions don't bother. Jared, you or the people who are gonna be impacted by this, Sarah and Jen Pennington and.
No, and that's why I said it's easier to do it that way, because here's the thing. For the board and for the administrator, right, that is seen as a mutually beneficial thing that both would accept, right? That's easy to do. If you wanna tell somebody, currently you have a 2-year contract, but I'm gonna only give you a 1-year contract, they're gonna say, no
that's not-
way.
no.
Well,
You're gonna say, well, we can do it anyway, we just have to not renew you and then offer you a different one.
No,
That gets messy.
I would just say give the 4 people the 1-year extension and everybody else a 2-year contract is how the resolution or the consent agenda should be worded. The resolution could be.
need to make that a little more.
Yeah, and I need to state this because really, as we're going through this process, we didn't take into effect or even have any discussion on who was a 25 or a 26. So I don't want you guys to think that I'm trying to navigate something to get myself another year. Like that is the last thing that I want you to think I'm doing. What I am doing is I'm trying to get everybody on the same page. And if it happened to be that I was in the group of 25s, I would just be looking at trying to have another 2-year contract with you. We would be having those discussions at this point in time anyway. And I would have been a little bit more Johnny on the spot with you, reminding you, you guys need to get this thing done because you have to make a decision,
right.
right, about my contract. I haven't been chomping or championing that discussion because, listen, I know I've got another year on my contract, 1.5 years, and I know you'll get it done. We're not under the gun with that. If we had been, I would have said, listen, you guys gotta get this done for me because you need to be able to tell me whether or not you're
Right.
going to renew my contract
And Jared and I have had multiple conversations
along those lines.
along those lines, just
Right.
where are we at and
Part of the planning.
what do we,
Right.
you
Piece
know,
of that.
And saying, and that's why we took the route we did, changing up the evaluation on a mid-year like this versus, doing it in a year that was an expiration year, because that would be difficult. So there is a methodology to all the stuff that we're doing. I just want to know how you guys want to navigate it so that we can make sure that Margaret has her marching orders and we can communicate. Right?
I think we do need to make sure somehow that the board understands that we are then granting, because the superintendent is our employee, that the board understands very clearly then that this is a one-year extension in
Of the
addition
current
to.
contract.
Correct.
Right.
So that goes into the minutes, because if it's not in the
Yes.
minutes, then it didn't happen.
Mhm.
So that's the
Yeah,
clarity.
so we just want to make sure that we understand the, decision that. we're
And I think
making.
they need to know that for anybody who's going to have a one-year extension. I mean, the other ones are under my control, and I'm suggesting to you, this is what it is, right? But remember, that's just me telling you what I operationally think you should do. You're the one who is still the contracting agent, right? You can tell me, no, I don't like your idea. But this is what I'm telling you, I think you should do for anybody who's on a 26, right?
Thank you for the discussion on that. Any other questions regarding that? The only other one question that I had, as far as the extracurricular appointments, Margaret, can you just remind us? This looks like it's winter sports that are already going. And so,
So these are just, we break our extracurricular appointments into fall, winter and spring. And so those that are more or less renewals get pushed through now for winter. We have, yes, some of these have been, not all, but some of them have been our recruitment. Baseball folks, we've had some turnover in that area. I
mhm,
mean, we haven't in the past broken out whether it's a recurring appointment or the result of a recruitment. We don't usually maintain that much data on all of these coaches. Especially at the assistant and JV
Oh,
level
sure.
where they come and go quite
Yeah.
quickly. Sometimes, so that, this is just a collection of, either recruitment or renewals.
right,
So
which I
can
get that.
Can I do a piggyback question?
Yeah,
So on that, some of these are renewals. I'll use a couple of the names on here for boys basketball. They've been with the program for a couple of years now. I'm curious, it's now the middle of December. Can you just remind, I know we've had this conversation a couple of years ago and I just don't remember the answer. Why don't we have this done like in October? Because the winter seasons start in November. So here, they already are part of the program. I understand new hires, take that off the table right now, I understand that, but the ones that are recurring, and there's a number of them on here that we have had in our district for a number of years. Can you help me understand why we're doing it the middle to end of December when we're almost a third of the way through the sports
do it
season,
before the
as
sports
opposed
season.
to October and November?
I do not know the background for each of the individual appointments, so, I mean, I don't track it that closely because most of them are routine and.
So let me rephrase the question.
I don't know.
Winter sports, extracurricular appointments, why aren't those in generality on the consent agenda for, say, November or October as opposed to December?
And again, I would have to go back and look at, like, when do we get the extracurricular assignments? So we send those out to RMS, we send them out to the high school, to Jamie Kemper. And when they come back in, I don't monitor every single extracurricular appointment that comes through, so I would need to go and pull all the data and see what the specifics are related to why do we sometimes have winter people coming in winter and sometimes coming in fall, because I think I suspect if I go back and look in detail at everybody that's been forwarded as an extracurricular assignment, that I'll find a collection of people from fall that included some winter sports and some fall sports. So, I mean, it isn't that closely monitored of a process, and it isn't as formal of a process as we do for other positions like teachers or paraprofessionals or.
And I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do or how to do it.
No, but it's
What
a,
I'm- Like, what in scenarios where if there's not a deadline, it's just, well, whatever kind of trickles through. So I'm just wondering, is there a deadline that's in December? And I don't need the answer right now. It's a question I had. I know that a couple years ago I had a similar question. It's like,
Mhm.
we're partway through the season already and now we've got the appointment. That just, it didn't add up to me. That's
So
all.
I will find the answer, but I don't know it. I mean, I will have to
Yeah,
come back
that's okay.
and.
No, and if the
report
answer
that.
comes for the spring, because I'm gonna have the same question in the spring.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, as they come through, because spring starts in March, I hope we're not getting these appointments in June. Cause it just doesn't
Right.
make sense to me,
like you think you'd
because-
have them on the list before they start coaching. Is that what you're saying?
or within the month, of you know, or in that first month,
That they start,
you know, spring sports start in March.
Yeah. and
So
maybe there is a reasoning for it, but.
in March,
I
you
can
have
follow
all of
that
those
logic.
assignments done because they started.
Mhm,
Do you know what I
mhm,
mean? So
mhm.
that it just, the timeline was just a little off. I didn't understand.
Like I said, I'll have to do a deep dive
Okay.
into the details of what the timing is on each of the extracurricular appointments that we send out in any given month. We have numerous ones coming and going, so, you know, like I said, we don't maintain like resignation data or turnover data on those.
Yeah.
It's extra, right, and so not as closely monitored or as closely put into a system.
I'm not requesting a deep dive, but you had your hands full.
Okay, but
I'm
I
not
don't,
request, you know,
without that, I won't know what the answer is. And I mean, if I need to go and ask
Okay,
I mean, we have several people involved in the appointment process for extracurriculars. It's not as formal as our recruitment process for regular positions. So I will need to go and find out more, and I'd be happy to do that and happy to
Okay.
bring it back.
okay,
okay,
thank you.
sounds good. So we'll put that as an action item?
Mhm.
Okay. With the understanding that it won't necessarily come back with information for next month, maybe it'll take a little bit of time. And however that comes together, okay. All right, excellent. Employee Wellness Committee update. Okay, this is
So-
exciting. I
Yeah,
loved these
so-
slides, Margaret.
Thank you. So the Employee Wellness Committee is off to a little bit of a slow start this year. We were trying to get things aligned with the volunteers that we have in terms of meeting scheduling and things like that. So I wanted to provide from the last update that we've done to the HR committee. There have been some things that have been done by the committee. Again, I want to remind everyone, this is a volunteer, grassroots, no resources type of effort on behalf of a group of employees that are interested in employee wellness and, overall well-being. So, we had a couple of newsletters at the end of the year in spring, and then right before everyone headed out for the, summer. Each of those included a challenge. The challenges thing seems to have taken a level of interest. People seem to like that. They're responsive to our requests. Like, for example, the first one was, if you get to the end of the newsletter, that's when you found out there was a challenge, to go back. And we actually had 18 people that said, I filled out all the quiz and then the same thing with the mental wellness challenge over the summer. We had people who tracked a few items that had been designated in the summer newsletter. And when school started, we sent out an email saying, hey, did anybody do any of the summer challenge? And people responded and sent their responses to members of the wellness committee, who then assembled small prizes. The prizes are basically like small little items that are basically school district swag that we use for recruitment and for other community events and things like that. So it's not, we're basically just kind of swiping a little bit of the inventory to respond to those. It's not anything that is like.
People love that.
They do,
I don't know why,
we
but
get
they do.
really good responses from like the little
That's
water
good.
bottles or the stickers that we sent out and, things like that. We try to make it so that we can send the prizes via interdepartment mail, so that limits our like capacity in terms of the size and scope of the prizes.
Yeah.
But it has
Nobody's gonna
had,
blanket.
we don't give away that blankets again. So that is, one thing that it seems to have taken, is starting to gain some traction among our workforce. We also right now have a kindness challenge going on. I included the challenge calendar that we're working off of. There was some thought that holding people to being kind every single day of the month of December might be a stretch, so we picked 12. We do have a meeting tomorrow afternoon where we will be reviewing. Come on now, we can set that.
That sounded
funny. Somewhere.
People can't be that kind in December, no.
Instead of raising the bar.
Well, we can try, so.
Well, we
Um,
started at 0, they're raising
right.
it to 12,
12,
so we're
right.
starting at
And,
12.
I mean, we don't have school every single day of
Mhm.
December, so I mean, it's basically has the opportunity covered virtually every day of school.
Excellent.
So, and that is, going on right now. I've just anecdotally heard some people talking about, oh, you should put that in your kindness calendar and stuff like that. So people are paying attention
Nice.
to that. We do email distributions of health and wellness oriented quick read type material that we receive from the Employee Assistance Program, we receive from USI, and that we receive from Employee Assistance, USI, and courts. So they all distribute like little quick read posters that we distribute and or post at each of the schools. We will be talking about formalizing some plans for after the holidays at our meeting tomorrow. And are continuing to look at, there was some talk at the end of the school year, the committee was going to tap into Melissa Lampy for exploration of an idea of a wellness video. And I don't know how far that went. I saw some email communication. I don't know whether they were able to pull it all off in light of some other priorities that people had during the summer and that Melissa was working on with respect to strategic planning. But that's an idea that we will be also talking about tomorrow. And I mean, in general, these are individuals who are interested in both the health and well-being, both physical and mental health and well-being for the workforce, and are trying really hard to come up with creative ideas. Meeting scheduling is a really super big challenge, trying to find time that is respectful of the workload that everybody has and trying to find time that does not interfere with other committee schedules that a lot of these people that participate in this committee are also on other curriculum and safety and other types of district level committees. So that's where the Employee Wellness Committee is, and yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that
Yeah.
report and that update, Margaret. That is so exciting. That we-
Margaret has to have a lot of kudos for this. Just, for those of you who were around the table, 2 years ago, we didn't have anything,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And to see all the excitement, that committee is doing and working on, it is big. Yeah, that is a extra load of work that Margaret and her team took on, so congratulations, Margaret, it really is meaningful work, and it is a lot to do, so thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Agreed.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Because we had talked about that in relation to, different health items. And I love how you guys have, expanded it and even taken out like the challenges. Like, okay, that's fun. Excellent. Okay. Next thing, I know we're behind on our agenda, but I feel like we have enough buffer in here that we're, should be able to accomplish our, meeting and complete it in a timely fashion. So next we have a support staff salary update. I know this has been ongoing. Margaret included an implementation plan. And so you've been working on that, for months now. And I know that you wanted to, give us an update on how that's going and some concerns and challenges you've had with
Right.
that as well.
So this is just an update of a timeline that I had shared earlier with the committee, and you can skip through most of it down to the reevaluation request for RMS. So we went live with the program. We did in-person and video meetings with all staff that were affected by the change in the salary structure. We had some questions. We followed up with people. We talked with individuals and other small groups and had everything fully implemented and operationalized and audited by our October 23rd. In between the time that we did our meetings and we had a full implementation, we did have one request for an expedited appeal in order to potentially provide a retention offer to an individual. We did the reevaluation and realigned a couple positions or one position at RMS that was supported by documentation and endorsed by the consultants as an appropriate reevaluation. Our attempts at retention, however, did not work, and that they just were not successful.
Okay.
Since that time, we have had other appeals that have come in. I've had 2 from Food and Nutrition Services, 2 from the clerical appeals, as well as a request from the high school to realign the structure of their clerical team in general. The appeals were due December 1st. Those are all that I know of at this point. But what appears to be the issue with these appeals is potentially one that is associated with something that we knew was happening. And just to kind of refresh your memories, when you approve that schedule, the board approved a schedule that was priced at 66 2/3 of the market as the median spot. We had 60 people that even with that 66 2/3 spot as the median, that were priced over the top of their ranges. And so those individuals have come forward with either appeals or with concerns in general as to where's my wage growth. We have not made a final decision in terms of how we are going to handle that particular group of people. There are a few different options that can be considered. But here, the situation with the people above the ranges are that they are long-term and frequently high performers, people that are relied upon to keep operations running smoothly within buildings or within a certain function. That's great for us that we have long-term dedicated people in the organization, but essentially our data says that they are priced over the market the way it is. But this is creating some cultural angst at the building and amongst both the employees and our administrators in terms of like, what do you mean they don't qualify for any additional wage growth? So that is a concern that we are struggling with how to approach and resolve. I mean, we can't reevaluate every single job and continue to move people up because then that affects the overall internal distribution of our job alignment within the organization. I did talk with Jenna Bidwell about the situation from Cottingham Butler. She will be on deck and willing to talk with the committee next month when she was scheduled on deck for update on the teacher pay project that we currently have. But when I talked to her last week, we can talk support staff salary as well. But this is an emerging issue that we will be asking for more direction on from the HR committee and the board. because our options are somewhat limited. As you all know, probably more than me, our financial resources are increasingly limited, and we are positioned in a spot that is favorable from an outside market perspective. So I wanted to bring this to you because I know that there has been concerns expressed by longer term employees. I know they've talked with me, they've talked with Jared. I suspect some of them have reached out to board members and just bring this to the surface in terms of, yes, we are aware of it. We are exploring potential solutions, but it's kind of a difficult place to be in with respect to those long-term employees, especially those that are like the heavy performers. And we have limited opportunities, if any, for them for potential wage growth outside of maybe CPI. That is the scenario.
Thank you, Margaret. I know that that's not an easy report to give, and I know that, everybody's worked really hard on, the salary study and the direction we gave and things like that. I'll reserve the rest of my comments. Anybody has any questions or comments regarding the?
Trying to remember back, thinking, it's a while ago we talked about it, but there's always like a bonus structure available for, on top of base. And would that be able to help that situation?
Are you suggesting doing supplemental pay outside of the base
Correct.
on top of this program?
Well, I mean, I know this.
Because this program,
I'm not
this program
suggesting
runs
we-
outside of CPI as it is.
Right.
Right,
Right, so really, what you're talking about is what you're doing supplementally already.
Okay.
If you're suggesting we do some bonuses on top of that, then I'm okay, I'll listen to that and we can give you ideas, but I just.
it was an idea, not a statement to go do, just would that work, is it, I know we're up against budget constraints,
Are
obviously.
you talking
as well.
lump sums, Mike?
What's that?
Are you talking lump sum?
Like what you mean, like what we've done for like substitutes or something like that?
I thought,
We've done
we
it for
do.
subs.
Yeah, we have
Yes.
done bonuses for subs where.
Or hiring bonuses or.
Right, where they're paid in a lump sum and not added to the base rate.
Hmm.
We don't do that for teachers.
Okay.
Unless it's a recruitment bonus, like a sign-on
Yeah,
bonus, and then they get a lump sum.
Is that something maybe Jenna would have some
Yeah.
idea about?
Sure.
Because she'll come and she'll present to us about the other things, and then I mean, I appreciate you making us aware of like, this is where we're at, and then maybe she can kind of give some ideas
Right.
to us, is that
So-
kind of?
My purpose in bringing this up is to get some sense of where the HR committee is going to fall with respect to potential changes, or if the committee feels that we've done the best that we can, we're going to stick to the schedule as it is. We're going to have to recognize that longer term employees are, they're going to hit their max, and their wage growth beyond potentially CPI is limited. And that's like a function of the market that is
Yeah.
not something that we're willing to look at. I am taking and whatever guidance you give to me tonight back to Jenna to give her some preparation time to come back with ideas that would be potentially palatable for the committee and the board to consider.
This is our first year doing this
Correct.
structure,
Mhm.
so I'm hesitant to make changes or to propose changes at this point until we know a little bit more. I understand where you're coming from. It's like, okay, we kind of got our toes in the water. Maybe revisit this conversation in a year, in 6 months, but still have the conversation with Jenna, but where are things at and kind of go from there. So yeah, you don't want to have your most veterans not receiving anything and stagnant and things, because then that their worth doesn't feel honored and respected. Yet if you start making changes before we know what's going on overall, I don't know if we're gonna get the full feel, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I know that we had set, you know, our eye at the bottom of the top for, right, the 66 2/3 percentile, right? Because we thought that that was an equitable pay, that was above the midline, but wasn't certainly the most, you know, luxurious school district out there, right? So we came to that number as palatable. And really, I guess what we're saying is, unless you decide to navigate that piece differently or take a look to the outsiders, we are going to have people at that rate and above, also at teachers. You're gonna have this, you're gonna have the same comeback with a number of teachers who are paid at the top or past the top of our salary, our current salary schedule, right? That are gonna be above or well above that top third, or, you know, the bottom of that top third. The question is how do we want to react to that? Because historically, we have been a well-paying school district. Like, did we set our sights too low? Do we need to change some things? And like Diane says, maybe we need a year to have some more of that conversation. I don't know, but just saying that we set that as our aiming point, right? And we found out like there are a group of people, and there will be teachers in the same group, you know, that are so well paid that they're not on the schedule.
When you say outsiders, are we talking about the school districts? Or are we talking private business?
They did a cross section of both, especially for our non-certified staff, right? So if you did custodial services, some of those were school custodians, some of them were, you know, hospitals and whatever else. As we go for teachers, of course, we'll just use school districts data. But for some of those functions, administrative assistants and whatever, they looked at comparables in the workforce.
But I think what Jared was talking about, the outsider ones, we targeted this. So you've got the top X% and the bottom X%, you know, that top X%, I think is what you were talking about as an outsider, that they didn't
See this as
see
favorable.
they didn't see the same wage increase that
Okay.
this chunk did. So they're kind of just sitting and didn't get a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, and matter of fact, it's gonna make them even more stagnant than they were, and that was an unintended consequence, I think, of our program, but. Nonetheless, that's what happened, and it will happen again. Because we have the same parameters in place for our teacher model, right? We're going to have some people who are gonna be off that grid on the top end. That they're gonna get really stagnated, should we not do something differently?
And in a year, in 6 months, whatever, perhaps the conversation is, it may not be this percent, maybe it's just this percent for the, you know,
I mean,
for the top.
unless the board,
I don't know.
unless the board's intent is that, right? Like, hey, you got to the top really quickly, enjoy the top as long as you're there, because that's our top. You know, if that's the answer, then that's the answer, you know? I think we'll be looking for recruitment, but it may be the answer, you know?
And I don't know, is that similar, like, when I was still teaching, that once you're the top, but you got your CPI, there was opportunity for different bonuses throughout if you were, you know, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
There are opportunities. that
Stipend
others don't.
activity, right?
Yes,
That's what we call
yes.
stipend activity.
Thank
And
you.
that isn't, like, that is not part of.
No, that is
That's
not
not
part of
part
the
of
teacher
it.
tape.
No, that's where we get
Support
support
staff.
funding.
Yeah.
My only other question, and this is a minor one, is it a typo on the thing, the very first one, July 10th, 25th, 2025? Should that have been 2024?
Oh, yeah. I should have been
Good
Guys
catch.
have a good night, and we'll check in with you on the
Yeah.
rest of the
Thanks.
meetings later.
Okay, great, thank you. Margaret, thank you very much for the work that's been done, for carrying through for bringing this forward to us. You know, we've talked about in board operations as far as, you know, yeah, we want to know when things are going well, but we need to understand the challenges as well. And we need to understand some of the consequences of the challenges. And so thank you for bringing this forward. Thanks for, you know, giving us this detailed information. You know, obviously we need to pay respect to our fiscal situation. You know, I mean, if we all want to be here, you know, we have to give respect to that. I guess I would be interested as far as, you know, what Jenna might be able to bring forth. Okay, if we stay at the 66%, wait, whatever, sorry, forgot the percentage, but
Yeah.
we stay at the 66, what are potential consequences of that? You know, would that mean, you know, we have 20 people who are in that sector and this, yes, that could mean that we lose these people. That's a, you know, retention piece. Well, what are the other effects of that? If it's the, you know, person who is the main administrative assistant, I'm sorry if I'm not using the correct title, but if they're the main, you know, person that someone sees when they come into the school and they know the kids and the families and they know how the school operates that way, if we have that person leave, how does that affect the beginning of school and people, you know, having all their correct, or does it not? You know, are people cross-trained and things like that? I guess I want to know some of the consequences maybe that we're not thinking about, or maybe that we don't see. But then also as far as if we're like, okay, if we decide to like, no, you know what, these people, I mean, oh, I know people are so valuable. And I appreciate and respect what they give to us. However, if we change the 66%, what percent would that look like? And what are those budgetary consequences because of that? You know, and maybe it's like, okay, well, then when you have, you know, is some of the support staff then bumping up to the wages of beginning teachers? You know, like what are the long-term consequences of those decisions?
Well, and I want
guess.
to piggyback on that, an
Mhm.
unintended consequence. If you start having all of it be the same, I'll say a one size fits all, everybody gets the same, whatever. We recognize our fiscal responsibility in the situation we are right now. You don't want to have to cut teachers to meet that, and now class sizes go from this to this. So that's an unintended, because I bet if you asked a teacher, do you want an extra $1,500 a year? Or do you want to go from 28 to 33 in a class? That would be an interesting conversation piece. So it's just it's an unintended.
Yeah.
And that's why I just don't know if we have enough information yet to go in that, but these are great, at least questions. So we have all the puzzle pieces to make that decision.
So action item is talk to Jenna and ask her to develop some information as it relates to potential bonuses or payments for people at the top or over the top. And then develop some scenarios on what would happen if we went beyond the 66 and 2/3% as our median for our salary schedules, and then what the financial impact of that may be, as well as a discussion as to potential intangible consequences that might occur as a result of not changing or offering additional pay. Okay.
I would say that's accurate. Does that sound, does that?
Okay. So that was what I needed there.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Margaret. Substitute staffing report. All right, we're getting an update there.
So we pulled our 23, 24 and 24, 25 fill rates and absences. This obviously high level. It does pull out the people that have been absent for FMLA absences that are kind of counted in a separate absence category. The table that you see there with the actual numbers is laid out in charts following that. I think you can see that 23, 24. So I should say in terms of the titling, elementary and secondary mean teachers, instructional and special ed mean paras. So that didn't come out as clearly. And you can see that from that our staffing levels for 23, 24 were a little bit better in terms of, well, I should talk about absences first. So our absences in 24, 25 are down at the secondary level, about the same at the elementary level for our teachers. There's arguably not much change in our paraprofessional absences for both of those years. Our fill rates are, I think everyone kind of has an idea about this, is that our teacher fill rates are in today's market considered pretty high. If you can get over like 75, 80% of a fill rate for teachers, that's considered good. Our fill rates for our instructional paras are usually about half of the time we can fill those jobs. Our fill rates for special ed paras are horrible. But I will also say that our challenges in recruiting special ed paras are also quite significant. And I had mentioned this to Tina when I talked, but I mean, the quality of the candidates that we are having apply for special ed para jobs, despite quite a bit of extensive advertising and, employee recruitment and, posting everywhere that we can think of, the caliber of the candidates coming in do not make them a good fit for special ed paraprofessionals. And when I say not a good fit, I'm looking at only the most minimum qualifications for our special ed paras. So can we get them licensed? And we have had some hires that no, we cannot. And are they, our background checks sufficiently clean enough to support a good, this person being a sound hire for a school district working with kids that have special needs? And recently, the number of people that are not fitting our hiring criteria along those lines has been kind of high. And so we can't find regular people to fill those special ed para positions. And we have had some success in recruiting people that had promising employment performance with the district, and then for whatever reason, most often it's either I'm leaving to get a full-time job with benefits, or I have other scheduling school or childcare situations that don't allow me to reliably show up in a regular position. Those individuals we recruit into the sub pool so that we can maybe perhaps get at least a few shifts of work from them as they are available. And they have been open to doing that, those individuals that are leaving for those personal types of considerations. But the recruitment scenario for special ed paras here in this district, as well as throughout this entire region, is really challenging. And we continue to have a challenging applicant pool that we're dealing with. I mean, we are taking as many steps as we can to recruit additional candidates. We have had ongoing job postings. We had, right now I have, my little sheet here. We've had teacher and para jobs posted on Indeed. We Can Handshake, which is a applicant system that's used by many colleges and technical colleges, universities. We're running ads consistently now daily in the Daily Times through December 24th, which I just want to mention that the ad space on the Daily Times is quite expensive.
Is that really very fruitful anymore?
We'll
mean, I'm just
see how many.
Wondering
applicants
any
we get out.
valuation on maybe that one,
So,
considering it's an expense.
I'll check back when we start to get numbers above one for applicants, so most of our applicants are through week with Indeed. Although I would like to say that the quality of the candidates that apply on Indeed, because Indeed has this automatic apply where you don't have to extend any effort at all other than just click, I want that job, that job, that job. I mean, we vet those applications frequently find that if we get like a third of them in for genuine employment consideration, that is a good response. So, I mean, people from foreign countries applying for jobs, and because it's so easy in Indeed, once you make your profile, you can apply for thousands of jobs that, you know, just by clicking
Yeah,
a few buttons. So that isn't as, I know that it's a go-to spot for a lot of job postings, especially in the technical and retail and clerical and entry level areas, but it takes a lot of, you get volume, but it's not necessarily always
good
quality
fits
volume.
with us. Okay,
So I know that Jared is rounding, we have rounding updates at some point. But we are not hearing the same level of panic or upset about substitute staffing that we had last time this year when we were doing our rounding. So I mean, I don't want to say that we're in an ideal situation, but we seem to have addressed some of the bigger concerns as it relates to paraprofessional, or as it relates to substitute staff. We are continuing to bring new people on as they come in. I mean, I know that they were looking at somebody today that had applied, and then they pull those application materials and, you know, send our follow-up application and new hire documentation and things like that, background check, release forms and things like that. I will be doing a support staff or a substitute staff survey. I think some of you were here in 22, 23 when I did that, and I also had run a focus group in 2022 for substitutes, which I'll again do and invite people over. For anyone that is interested in like participating in a small talking face-to-face type group in spring. And we do continue to monitor where we're at in the market, which is favorably placed. It's not top of the line, but it isn't the middle either. So, you know, we're pretty much kind of placed in somewhat in alignment with that 66 2/3 to 70% market right now for substitute daily rates.
okay, great.
We do follow up with all of our retirees after the 75-day waiting period to see if there's interest there. So that's where we're at.
Awesome.
I'm sorry.
In the interest, I was just gonna say, in the interest of time, does anybody have any questions regarding the substitute? Yes.
I do. The overall absences, are those absence hours or are those absence people?
Those are days.
So elementary. So overall absences. What do you mean by they are days?
So absences.
So I'm on slide 2.
Yeah, so absences are counted in either full days or half days.
Okay. So basically, if someone is absent full day, so it's kind of like, it's like a per person kind of thing. Yeah, I get it. Okay. Thank you. My second question is, if you could help shed a little bit of light without going too deep. This is just September to November. Secondary last year was over 150, 160 more absences than this year. Was it, I mean, I know they did some work with the math curriculum stuff, but that doesn't attribute to 150 days. So I'm just curious, do we know, is there a trend? Because elementary is pretty similar. the paraprofessionals are pretty similar. Special ed is pretty similar. That one just had,
Mhm.
So we had some conversations with the building administrators about some trends that we had seen without going into all the details. But there were some definite patterns of like casual sick calls that, or calls that were really, I mean, just like that sparked some curiosity and some questioning. And we had talked with both of the secondary administrators as well as their teams about what was driving this increase in absences. And we had encouraged stronger oversight of absences and setting forward a more direct message about absence or attendance expectations, which once we called out some of those things, they seemed to have relatively fast turnaround in terms of correction. There were certain key dates that seemed to be driving a high number of absences. And I mean, at times there were certain people that you could reliably count on calling in sick on PD days or the day before a break or things like that. And so we started like pointing out some of those individual trends. So I know that there were some individual conversations as well as some staff conversations, full staff conversations related to absenteeism needs to be reduced. And we need everybody here every day. If we're gonna be telling our kids, we need everybody here every day. And there were some direct messages that were sent at the secondary level. And we did notice, that we are having fewer call-ins, and some of those call-ins, like there was a really big difference on PD days this year compared to last year in terms of,
well, I'm glad you brought that up because like where I worked before, there was a separate way to call in for a PD day, for a day before a break. There were different parameters that you had to meet. And I didn't know if we have something,
we
it was
have,
much stricter.
we have guidelines, but I mean, there are times when the reason for the absence is like, doesn't fit the guidelines, but we do try to, there is more strict enforcement of the guidelines that are in place and more questioning about absences. Like, I think we got a little bit casual, and I will attribute that to, COVID, where we got very casual about attendance because it was more like, please don't be sick, if you're sick, stay home,
Yeah.
Right,
you
right.
know, and that type of.
No, thank you very much.
Good question. Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate how thorough you guys are in giving that information and exploring, you know, all the options that are out there and everything like that. Future meeting planning, in January, we do have a full meeting. We'll of course have consent agenda. The biggest portion of that, of our January meeting will be the teacher compensation model update. And you know, then parsed together with the support staff salary update, because we will have Jenna here from our consulting firm. And then the exit turnover reporting, just like we had previously determined the different updates on that throughout the year. So based on that, anybody have any questions about future meeting planning?
No, ma'am.
No, we're good. We're just throwing stuff over here. All right. Oh.
Just because I didn't wear orange.
All right, our last item, our action items, which I think you so wonderfully restated there, Margaret. You have, tell us what you have as far as action.
Staff, ideas for addressing concerns related to support staff.
Yep.
And then, I have, taking a look at the timing of extracurricular appointments as it relates to the seasons and recruitment versus or replacement versus recurring appointments.
All right. Does that
And
sound
then
like?
you also wanted the consent agenda broken out.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you. That would be another action item.
I don't know if that's an action item.
Just to restate.
Well,
rewrite
this
the
needs to
consent
be-
agenda.
Because
But
action
it's good to
item,
have it stated to make
It
sure
should
that
be
we
in-
have it.
yeah, it should be in the
completed.
minutes, but not as an action
Yeah.
item.
Yes, you said that I should clarify, this is These are
Yes.
1 year extensions in the minutes.
Yes.
So
Because the action items are things that would be coming back at future.
I still think the consent agenda as written doesn't give an indication as to what the new deadline, the new end dates are. There's nothing in there that says how long those are being renewed till. So it needs clarification one way or the other.
Right.
And not just in the minutes, but.
I'll edit those.
Yeah,
Never mind.
the actual consent agenda will be
Yeah,
edited.
right,
Yes,
exactly.
yes, yeah. And then that's part of, our responsibility as, members to, check that out, beforehand, and we'll partner together so that we can make sure we all understand it there. Anything else as far as action items or clarifications or anything?
No, that's enough for me.
Okay, great. We're all done. 6:14, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Right.